One day, after a fairly quiet night, an officer came along and asked our three-man bunker guard team from the 116th if we wished to be full-time on the bunker we were on. It would be a 24-hour duty with no other duty assignments if our company commander gave his okay. Being lazy and not thinking too much about it, we said sure. Our company commander approved of the situation, so we were now on the bunker all day and all night. Little did we know at the time that our bunker was one that had many guys killed on it in night attacks. It seemed to be in a bad spot on the perimeter. We thought this is all we have to do all day and night. Nice. We could use the day to sleep as nothing happens along the perimeter in the day. It was a different thing at night. During the night, the VC and NVA would start shooting at the bunkers in various locations along the perimeter. They seemed to be feeling out what kind of reaction that they would get from us. Flares would go up in the air, sometimes by artillery, sometimes dropped by helicopters, and sometimes by star cluster flares fired off by us. And sometimes trip flares would be set off by the VC probing the perimeter wire. All in all, every night was somewhat busy with shooting going on back and forth, but mostly by us shooting at shadows. We had plenty of ammo and they knew where we were, but we couldn't see them dug in the dirt or hiding in the trees, bushes, or grass. On bunker guard at night, one always had an uneasy feeling and some were somewhat terrified. It was easy to understand that any concentrated attack on a small section of the perimeter by the enemy would succeed and the guys guarding that area would die a very violent death. But once we were in Vietnam, we realized that fighting and even dying was our job. An unpleasant thought. I never knew anyone in the army who wanted to die. The bunkers that we were assigned to were holes dug into the ground about 5 feet deep by about 12 feet wide and 12 feet long. Then sandbags filled with dirt went up on all sides about 8 feet high with a slit in the front facing our barbed wire as a firing position and a small hole in the back as a doorway protected by more sandbags against an explosion near it. Also, about 7 feet up from the dirt floor of the bunker were some lumber beams and steel airstrip landing pads with about 3 feet of sandbags on top of that, which made a roof and firing platform on top of the bunker. The bunkers were about 60 yards from each other. In between the bunkers there were trenches dug so that more defenders could jump in to defend the perimeter against an attack. What a joke. Any intelligent, concerted attack by the enemy at night would wipe out the 9 poor guys defending 120 yards of perimeter in a matter of probably 30 seconds. Or less. And we knew it. And we knew the enemy knew it also. How unnerving. We were at the mercy of what the enemy decided to do or not to do. It would take the infantry at least 20 minutes to get to our aid if they were even called. Or if any were available. How do we know? Because it happened to us one night. Why were some of us killed and not all? I have a theory about that. All around the perimeter was strung about 5 lines of barbed wire. We hung empty C-ration cans on the wire with rocks in them so that if the wire wiggled at night we would hear it and start shooting, figuring the enemy was trying to sneak in. Sometimes it might be an animal. Scattered in the barbed wire area, we set up booby traps in the form of grenades with tripwires attached, so if someone tripped the wire, the grenade would go off. Also, we set up claymore mines. They were a curved steel container about 12 inches long and about 6 inches high, full of ball bearings with an explosive charge behind them. One stuck them into the ground, the curve facing outward, and a wire attached to a small thumb plunger that went into the bunker. We could also place the detonator on the claymore mine on a tripwire. The mine going off would warn us that someone was out in the barbed wire. We also placed flares on tripwires so that a flare would go up and light up the area where it was tripped. In and on the bunker, we had a M60 machine gun 7.62 mm, a 40 mm grenade launcher, 3 M16 rifles 5.56 mm, and about 24 fragmentation hand grenades, some starlight flare clusters that we could shoot up in the air to light up an area, a vintage radio World War I setup that one had to crank for power and to ring up the radios in the other bunkers that were connected by ground wires. And every third bunker, which was ours, had a starlight scope. It was round about 2 feet long and 7 inches in diameter. It ran on batteries and was a scope that had an eyepiece to look into, that sort of enabled one to see in the dark when pointed at an area. What one saw while looking into the starlight scope at night would be a very wobbly, wavy green area that one could not really discern what one was looking at, but it picked up movement. The movement seen could be animals or people, as there were no sharp outlines seen when looking through the scope, but it proved very helpful on the night perimeter. One could see a possible attack forming at night without the enemy knowing that they were being watched. There was a warning on the scope that one could not look through it more than 10 seconds, as it could destroy one's eyesight permanently, as it had some sort of radiation in it. One night, although fairly quiet except for the usual now and then back and forth shooting, we saw through the starlight scope a lot of movement directly in front of us, about 50 yards outside of the barbed wire. The barbed wire was about 50 yards from the bunker. It looked like it might be an attack forming. We decided to notify the other bunkers in our area and tried to ring them up on our antiquated radio. We could not get in communication with anyone, as it seemed someone cut the radio line, another reason to be concerned. It was about 2 a.m. and the night was solid black. One could not see their hand in front of their face. Somehow I was picked, or I volunteered to crawl to the bunker about 50 yards to our left and let them know what we were seeing. There was a code we followed while crawling around at night. We had a back and forth passwords that were changed every night. If one heard another person scraping along, one was supposed to shout out the first password, for instance Milwaukee. The reply would be Wisconsin. If Wisconsin was not the reply heard, or there was no reply, one was supposed to shoot at the scraping sound. But what got to me is once one shouts out the first password, what stops the enemy scraping along from just throwing a grenade at you? Nothing. Nighttime was very dangerous. Anyway, I took my M16, some clips of ammo, and a few grenades and started to crawl slowly to the bunker on my left. After a while I stopped crawling. It was so dark that I thought maybe I might be crawling off course. No moon, no stars. It was very disorientating trying to recognize a true direction in the pitch dark. I actually thought I might start crawling to the barbed wire and have one of our own guys shoot me, or I might hit one of our own mines. Also, one of our own trigger-happy guys might shoot me anyway, even if on course. While I was thinking about it all, a whole lot of shooting started up from both sides. I saw by the tracers on both sides that I was between our bunkers and a little way out front of them. I was in a fairly good spot if I didn't shoot or move, but in a bad one if I started to shoot. There were plenty of muzzle flashes in front of me to shoot at. Once I start to shoot, my muzzle flash would be a target, and I might have both sides shooting at me, but I couldn't just not shoot, I thought. I had to join in whether people start shooting at me or not. Shooting tracer rounds is like telling the enemy to shoot at me. The tracers emanating from the barrel of the rifle pinpoints one's location. I shot a few non-tracer rounds at the muzzle flashes in front of me. I realized for the first time that I could not see my rifle sights at night. They never taught us that in basic training. This was my first battle. I shot some more and my red tracers indicated I was American. Some artillery flares went off up high and lit up the area with a very wiggly, surreal kind of light. I saw that the dirt around me was being kicked up by bullets hitting the ground near me. Oh well. Suddenly behind me a big noise broke out. It was a quad .50 caliber gun truck opening up on the area in front of me. Suddenly the enemy shooting stopped, thankfully. A few 2.5-ton trucks were outfitted with 4 .50 caliber machine guns and wandered the road behind the bunker line and would quickly join in any battle that started up along the line. It just happened to be there as our area was attacked quite often. The trucks were destroyed later on by RPGs, so I heard. But tonight, one of them probably saved my life. I crawled back to my bunker shouting the password. The flares were shot up, lighting up the area until dawn. A few guys were killed and wounded that night in our area. That night was my first introduction to the shooting war. I was not very scared, but I was scared. But I could function in a rational way. There are definitely levels of fright. I think when I decided to shoot instead of keeping silent, I figured I very well might die, but I had to do it. It was my duty as a soldier. Duty can get one killed for sure. I think I passed some sort of personal test that night. I could function well under pressure, I thought. I was scared but brave. But it did take me about 10 seconds to start shooting when the shooting started. I definitely thought about not shooting, but I found myself in a difficult position as a new guy soldier. I had to think about my alternatives. If nothing else, I was a thinker. Every situation should take thought, I figured. Later on, I figured a very quick reaction was one's best bet, but one had to know what quick reaction was best for what situation. That takes thought and a very clear mind to figure that out immediately. That morning, the lieutenant in charge of the guard in our area asked us who the hell was shooting from between the bunkers. As I got stuck between the bunkers when the shooting started on my way to tell the other guys in the other bunker about what we saw on the starlight scope as the radio wouldn't function properly. "Ha," he laughed. "You may have saved us from a fierce night attack. With the quad 50s opening up and you in between the bunkers where the infantry usually is when reinforcing the bunker line, they may have thought that we were anticipating their attack and called it off," he said. After the lieutenant left, one of my buddies on our bunker said, "You're a hero, you saved us all," and then he started laughing. "You should get a medal, huh?" It was all three of our first shooting fight as we were all new guys from the 116th AHC. As I recall, the other two on the bunker was Denny Fuller from Elkhart, Indiana, and Ray Hopkins from Grand Junction, Colorado. And we started talking about how we probably made a bad choice on volunteering for permanent bunker duty. We were on the bunker for only 4 days and were nearly all killed last night. And we were in Vietnam for only about 16 days. Of course, nowhere in Coochie Base Camp was safe, but definitely some places were safer than others, and the bunker line at night was not one of those safer places. "Geez," Denny said, "I can't believe me Denny Fuller, Mr. Nice Guy, who everyone in Elkhart loves and admires, has people that I don't even know trying to kill me." The three of us were good-humored jokers. We made each other laugh. We got to philosophizing often. Ray chimed in that maybe you had enemies that you didn't know about. I would say, don't take it personal. They are trying to kill us here because we are here. "Yeah," Ray would say, "these green clothes we have on makes us targets. They don't like us invading their country. We are here to save themselves from themselves," or something like that, and they don't like that idea. Nope, not at all. Daytime on the bunker line was spent trying to stay cool, but was impossible. We would put up an army poncho or two for shade and try to get some sleep. The NVA never would attack us in the daytime because we had air power and they did not. It would cost them too many lives attacking in daylight, and they were not stupid. At night things get confusing and was the time to get to us. We ate C rations in the daytime and wrote letters or read a book or magazine if there were any. We would go out to the wire and check our mines, and some engineers would reconnect the radio wires that were cut. We also checked for snakes that fell into the bunker and trench holes. The snakes would fall in and couldn't get out. We didn't relish the thought of jumping on snakes at night. We thought about who was cutting the radio wires at night. Of course, it had to be the enemy, but that was unnerving because that means they could get through our barbed wire without us knowing about it. Not good. I thought about the two old Vietnamese guys that I bought Cokes and chips for from a little shop behind us. I also gave them money so they could buy something for their family in the village. I also gave them C rations. I felt sorry for the poor Vietnamese all around. The two old guys liked me and were very friendly toward me. I asked them what they did, and they said that they repaired the roads behind us and burned the poop barrels that were dragged out of the outhouses. They lived under a piece of plywood held up by two 55-gallon barrels about 70 yards behind us. They had some sort of clearance so that they didn't leave at 5 p.m. like the rest of the Vietnamese who worked on the base. I figured the MPs knew what they were doing.